March 6th, 1945, Cologne, Germany. Smoke curls through shattered buildings, drifting between piles of rubble that used to be homes, shops, and churches. The Gothic cathedral, the heart of the city, still stands, its twin spires blackened but unbroken after more than 200 bombing raids. Everything else is ruin. Down one of the deserted streets, 2 American Sherman tanks crawl forward, their engines growling treads crunching over bricks and debris. They move slowly, nervously, their job simple but deadly. Support the infantry as they clear the city block by block. It's become a grim routine. Advance, clear, hold, then start again. Every corner could hide a German tank, every shadow a Panzerfaust waiting to strike. Inside the lead Sherman technician 5th grade, Robert Kellner scans the crossroads ahead. The air smells of smoke and cordite. He's been doing this for days, maybe weeks. It's hard to tell time anymore. Each street looks the same, destroyed. Then it happens. A flash from the left, a deafening crack. A German 75mm shell tears through the Sherman's gun shield like it's paper. Before anyone can react, a second shell slams in. Inside, chaos fire, blood screams. The driver dies instantly. The gunner is hit, slumps over his sights. Kellner stumbles out of the turret, one leg gone below the knee, collapsing onto the pavement as his tank burns behind him. The second Sherman jerks into reverse, desperate to get out of the kill zone, but too late. A third shot rips through its track, immobilizing it. The crew bails out, running for cover as flames rise. Their attacker, unseen silent, is a German Panther tank hidden among the ruins near the train station. Its commander, 2nd Lieutenant Wilhelm Bartelborth, watches through his periscope. Perfect shot, perfect ambush. He feels a familiar satisfaction. The Panther has been the predator of this war, a machine of sleek, sloped armor and a high-velocity gun that can destroy any Sherman before it even gets close. To Bartelborth, this is just another hunt. 2 kills already and maybe more to come. Behind him, the Hohenzollern Bridge lies collapsed across the Rhine, cutting off retreat. It doesn't matter. He's confident. His Panther has never failed him. But only a few blocks away, something new is moving through the smoke. It's not a Sherman. It's lower, heavier, its silhouette unfamiliar. Its long 90mm gun glints under the grey March sky. The Americans have brought something different, something no German commander has ever seen before. In the next 90 seconds, that unknown shape will change everything. It will destroy not just a Panther tank, but the very idea of German invincibility. It will prove that American armor can finally fight on equal terms, and it will be caught on film for the world to see. For 2 long years before Cologne, American tankers lived under the shadow of the Panther and the Tiger. From the first clashes in Normandy in 1944, they learned the hard truth: German armor ruled the battlefield. The M4 Sherman had been designed for a different war, a war of speed, reliability, and numbers. In North Africa, it had outperformed the German Panzer III and Panzer IV. It was light, dependable, easy to repair, and above all, it could be built by the tens of thousands. That was the American way. Quantity has a quality all its own. But the war had changed. When the new generation of German tanks appeared, the Panther, with its 75mm high-velocity gun, and the Tiger I with its legendary 88mm cannon, everything the Americans thought they knew about tank warfare became obsolete. The same Sherman that had seemed unstoppable in Tunisia now looked fragile, even primitive, on the roads of France. The numbers told a brutal story. A Sherman's frontal armor, about 80mm at best, could not withstand a direct hit from a Panther's gun at any range. Its own 75mm M3 cannon, reliable but slow, could not penetrate the sloped steel hide of the Panther or the thick plate of the Tiger unless fired at near point-blank distance. In every head-on fight, the Americans were at a fatal disadvantage. German crews knew it, and they relished it. They considered engagements with Shermans little more than target practice. Some even referred to them as Tommy Cookers or Ronsons, mocking the way the tanks burned so easily. The Panthers, with their sleek armor and long barrels, could kill from 2 kilometers away. The Tiger's massive 88mm gun could reach even further. In contrast, the Sherman's effective killing range was less than 1 kilometer. For the men who climbed into those Shermans day after day, the psychological weight was immense. They weren't just fighting the enemy. They were fighting math, the cold certainty that the odds were against them. Every mission carried the same quiet dread: if they met a Tiger or a Panther head-on, they would almost certainly die. Survival depended on cunning teamwork and often sacrifice. American doctrine reflected this grim reality. The official tactic was called fix and flank. One tank or platoon would draw the Germans' fire acting as bait, while others maneuvered around to attack the sides or rear. It was a deadly equation. Everyone understood that the tank drawing the enemy's aim was unlikely to survive. It was bravery mixed with fatalism, routine wrapped around fear. Officers tried to compensate with artillery air power and sheer numbers. They told their men that 5 Shermans could overwhelm 1 Panther. But the crews knew what that meant. 2 or 3 of those 5 would not come back. They joked about it because joking was all they could do. Yet beneath the dark humor lay anger, an anger that grew with every burned-out hull and every friend left behind. By late 1944, as the Allies pushed into Germany, that anger reached Washington. Reports from the front described catastrophic tank losses. Letters from soldiers spoke of fighting against impossible odds. And then came the Battle of the Bulge, Hitler's last great gamble, where hundreds of Panthers and Tigers tore through the thin American armor. It became undeniable the United States, the most industrially powerful nation on earth, had gone to war with tanks that were outclassed. On January 5, 1945, the New York Times published an article that stunned the public. Its headline asked, "Why are American tanks inferior to the enemy's?" It accused the Army of complacency, of valuing production speed over the lives of its crews. Congress demanded hearings. The War Department scrambled for answers. But quietly, the answer was already on its way across the Atlantic. In secret testing grounds and design shops back home, engineers had been working on a new tank since 1943. It was known by a temporary name, T-26E3. It would soon earn a permanent one, the M26 Pershing, named after General John J. Pershing, commander of American forces in World War I. It was heavier, thicker, and armed with a weapon the Germans had never faced from an American tank, a 90mm gun. On paper, the Pershing was everything the Sherman was not. It weighed 46 tons, 10 more than the M4. Its silhouette was lower, making it harder to hit. Its hull and turret were sloped to deflect shells. The glacis plate, the slanted armor across the front, was 102mm thick, angled at 46 degrees, giving it an effective resistance of nearly 160mm. That was roughly equivalent to the Tiger's massive frontal plate. Its 90mm M3 gun fired a 24-pound armor-piercing round at 2,700 feet per second, enough to penetrate a Panther's frontal armor at normal combat ranges, and even threaten a Tiger if the shot was good. The Pershing was also built with the lessons of the battlefield in mind. Its suspension used wide tracks for better traction in mud and snow. Its crew compartment was roomier and safer. Ammunition was stored more securely to prevent the Ronson effect that had haunted Sherman crews, and yet, true to American engineering philosophy, it remained easy to maintain. Its engine, a Ford GAA-58, was the same basic model used in late-war Shermans, familiar to mechanics, reliable and backed by mountains of spare parts. While engineers refined, the design generals argued over doctrine. Some, like General Leslie McNair, insisted that the United States didn't need heavy tanks at all. He believed in tank destroyers, lighter, faster vehicles armed with powerful guns that would hunt enemy armor, while Shermans supported the infantry. To McNair, heavy tanks were wasteful, unnecessary. Others, led by General Jacob Devers of the Armored Force, disagreed. They had seen too many crews die and demanded a tank that could meet the Germans head-on. It was Devers' persistence that kept the T-26 project alive, but bureaucracy and debate delayed everything. By the time the Army finally approved mass production in late 1944, the war was already entering its final act. Only 20 Pershings made it to Europe before the new year. They were issued to veteran units like the 3rd and 9th Armoured Divisions, not as a replacement for the Sherman, but as an experiment. No one knew if the tank would live up to the hype. When those tanks rolled off the docks in Antwerp in January 1945, few people noticed. They arrived quietly, loaded onto railcars heading east toward the front. Each weighed 46 tons, so heavy that bridges sometimes creaked under their weight. Crews gathered around them with curiosity. The tanks looked alien next to the familiar Sherman, lower, broader, with a massive gun and thick cast turret. They had no idea that within weeks one of these machines would make history. For the German side, rumors began to spread almost immediately. A few intelligence reports mentioned a new American heavy tank appearing on the Western Front, but veterans scoffed. The Americans, they believed, didn't understand real armored warfare. They built tanks like they built cars, cheap, simple, replaceable. No number of Shermans could match German craftsmanship and discipline, so they laughed. They had been right for 2 years. Why doubt now that arrogance would die in the streets of Cologne? The morning of March 6, 1945 was grey and cold. Across the Rhine, the ancient city of Cologne lay in ruins, a ghost of stone and smoke. For days, the 3rd Armoured Division had been fighting street by street, clearing what was left of German resistance. Every intersection was a trap. Every open space could hide a gun barrel. At around 10 in the morning, 2 M4 Sherman tanks from the 32nd Armoured Regiment began to edge down a boulevard near the cathedral. Their mission was routine support. The infantry push forward, secure another block. But on this day, the routine became a massacre. Hidden near the train station, 2nd, Lieutenant Wilhelm Bartelborth of Panzer Brigade 106 watched through his periscope. His Panther Ausf, painted in mottled camouflage, sat in perfect ambush position. He had fought on the Eastern Front and survived Kursk. He knew how to kill tanks. When the lead Sherman appeared, he didn't hesitate. Feuer the Panther's 75mm gun cracked, spitting fire. The first round punched through the Sherman's gun shield. The second followed immediately, tearing through the front plate. The tank erupted in flame. Bartelborth's gunner reloaded calmly, the routine of a predator. The second Sherman tried to back away, but a third round shattered its track. Another easy kill. 2 American tanks destroyed in less than a minute. For Bartelborth, it was just another day's work. Then came the call over the radio, enemy Panther near the cathedral, 2 Shermans down. A few blocks away, Staff Sergeant Robert Early, commander of an unfamiliar new tank, the M26 Pershing serial number 303308, listened in. He had only been in combat for a few weeks. His crew was still learning the quirks of their new machine, but this was their chance to prove it. Inside the Pershing were 5 men: Early, the commander Clarence Smoyer, the gunner John DeRiggi, the loader Homer Davis, the driver, and Mickey Garth, the bow gunner. They had already painted a small white eagle on their turret, a nod to their tank's nickname Eagle 7. Now that eagle was heading straight into battle. Early made his decision quickly. They would approach the Panther from a parallel street, then turn in from the side. The plan was textbook catch the Germans' flank fire, first kill fast. He knew that a frontal duel, even with their new tank, was still dangerous. But Cologne's streets were narrow and full of debris. There would be no perfect angle. As they rolled forward, the heavy treads of Eagle 7 ground over rubble. The tank's engine strained its massive turret, rotating slowly as Smoyer scanned for targets. Ahead through the haze, they could see the intersection where the Shermans had died, 2 burning wrecks still smouldering. Somewhere beyond them, the Panther waited. Unbeknownst to both crews, a U.S. Signal Corps cameraman Technical Sergeant Jim Bates was positioned in a nearby building. He had watched the 2 Shermans die. Now he set up his 16mm Bell and Howell camera, focusing on the street below. His lens would capture what was about to unfold, the most famous tank duel ever recorded. In the Panther, Bartelborth peered through his sight. He expected another Sherman, maybe 2. He was ready. He had done this dozens of times. But as a new silhouette emerged from the side street, he frowned. The shape was wrong, lower wider, the turret unfamiliar. For an instant he thought it might be a friendly Panther from another unit. He hesitated. "Hold fire," he ordered. "Identify target." That hesitation would cost him everything. At that same moment, Clarence Smoyer saw movement through his gun sight. He recognized the long barrel of a Panther's gun pointing their way. "Target ahead," he shouted. Early didn't hesitate. Take the shot. Normally a tank crew would stop before firing, stabilize the gun aim carefully. But there was no time. If the Panther fired first, they were finished. Smoyer adjusted his sight, steadying as best he could. The tank lurched over the broken pavement. He squeezed the trigger. The 90mm cannon roared. The recoil slammed through the Pershing's hull, shaking the crew. The first round struck the Panther just below the gun mantlet, a perfect hit. It punched straight through 80mm of armor, then detonated inside the fighting compartment. Shrapnel ripped through the crew. The loader was killed instantly, the gunner wounded. Smoke poured from the turret. Smoyer couldn't see the result clearly through the haze. He fired again. The second shot hit the Panther's side armor, cutting through from one side to the other. The third shot followed another impact, another burst of smoke. The German tank was finished. Flames began licking through the open hatches. Bartelborth gave the order to abandon vehicle. He climbed out through the commander's hatch, his uniform on fire, and tumbled to the ground. 2 of his crew made it out alive. The rest did not. The entire engagement from first sight to final shot lasted less than 90 seconds. From his vantage point, Sergeant Bates filmed it all, the Pershing edging forward, the flash of its gun, the plume of smoke rising from the Panther, the crew scrambling out. It was one of the few tank duels of World War II ever caught on film, and the only one showing an American heavy tank defeating its German counterpart in real combat. When the smoke cleared, Early's crew sat in stunned silence. They had done it. They had faced the dreaded Panther head-on and won. Smoyer, still gripping the elevation wheel, exhaled. "Hit," he murmured. "It's burning." Early simply nodded. He radioed the report, Panther knocked out near Cathedral. Eagle 7 intact. Outside, infantrymen cheered. They had seen Shermans burn for months, seen friends die inside flaming coffins. Now, for the first time, they had seen an American tank take a hit and keep fighting, seen a 90mm shell tear through German armor that was supposed to be invincible. For them, it was more than a tactical victory. It was vindication. Proof that American steel could finally stand toe-to-toe with the best the Reich could build. That day, Eagle 7 became a legend. Within weeks, footage of the duel reached London and Washington. It was shown in newsreels splashed across newspapers. To the public, it was thrilling, the first visual proof that the tide of technology had turned. To tank crews across Europe, it was something deeper hope. For the Germans, the psychological impact was just as profound. The Panther's reputation had been built on fear, on its ability to destroy Shermans before they could even return fire. But in Cologne, that myth burned. The same sloped armor that had made the Panther untouchable was no match for the Pershing's 90mm gun. Word spread quickly among panzer units. Reports described a new American tank, heavily armored, deadly unstoppable at close range. Many dismissed it as exaggeration, but some began to worry. If the Americans could build one, Pershing, how many more were coming? The duel at Cologne did not change the course of the war. By March 1945, Germany was already collapsing. But it changed minds on both sides. It restored the confidence of American crews who had spent years fighting against impossible odds. And it shattered the illusion of German invincibility that had ruled the battlefields since 1940. Later that evening, as the fires in Cologne smouldered and the sound of battle faded, the men of Eagle 7 parked their tank near the cathedral. They were exhausted. Inside the cramped turret, the smell of burnt powder hung in the air. Someone opened a ration can. Someone else cleaned the gun's breech. Smoyer sat quietly, replaying the fight in his mind, the flash, the recoil, the moment the Panther burst into flame. He didn't feel triumph, just relief. They had survived. Years later, when asked about that day, Smoyer would say, "It all happened so fast, 90 seconds, but it changed everything." And he was right. In that brief span of time, caught forever on a few feet of black and white film, the balance of armored warfare tilted and the laughter of the SS tank commanders fell silent. The battle in Cologne was over in less than 2 minutes, but its impact rippled far beyond that ruined city. It became more than just a tank kill. It became a statement, a symbol, and a turning point in the psychology of war. For months, American tankers had lived with a bitter truth: they could win battles, but only through sacrifice. They fought bravely, but always at a disadvantage. When a Panther or Tiger appeared, every Sherman crew knew what it meant: flanking, calling air support, or dying trying. That reality shaped the very soul of armored warfare for the US. Army courage born from resignation. Then came Eagle 7. A single tank, a single fight captured on camera, and everything changed. The footage reached Allied headquarters within days. Officers gathered around projectors in smoky briefing rooms, watching frame by frame as the Pershing fired and the Panther burned. For the first time, American commanders could point to something concrete, a visual proof that their new design worked. They sent copies of the film to Washington, to the War Department, even to Congress. Newsreels played it across America with triumphant narration. An American heavy tank destroys the enemy's best. The M26 Pershing proves its power in Cologne. To the public, it was reassurance that their sons finally had the tools to survive. To the men on the front, it was something much deeper: hope. Tankers who had once joked darkly about their Ronson coffins now whispered a new name, Pershing. For the first time since Normandy, American crews felt they could look a German tank in the eye and not flinch. In combat units across the Western Front, word spread fast. A Panther destroyed by frontal fire, impossible they thought until they saw the proof. Even crews still driving Shermans felt the shift in morale. If the Pershing could do it, maybe the tide was turning. Maybe the end was near. Lieutenant Fred Collins, a Sherman commander in the 9th Armored Division, wrote in his diary a week later, "We heard about a new tank, heavier, meaner. One of them killed a Panther right in Cologne. The men talk about it all day. For once it feels like we might have the edge." The morale boost was enormous. When Pershings arrived in other divisions, they were treated almost like celebrities. Other tankers came to see them, to touch them, to ask questions. They called them big cats or our tiger killers. Commanders began assigning them to the toughest missions, crossroads, city centers, anywhere enemy armor was expected. But the glory came at a cost. Pershing crews soon discovered that their reputation made them targets. Every German gunner wanted to destroy one. Every encounter was a test. They carried the weight of expectation, the burden of being symbols. For the Germans, the psychological shock was equally profound. The Panther had been the pride of the Wehrmacht, a masterpiece of engineering feared and respected across Europe. Its combination of firepower, armor, and mobility had defined German tank doctrine. Crews trusted it implicitly. It was their shield and their sword. And yet in Cologne that shield had failed. News of the defeat spread through panzer units with the speed of rumor. At first, few believed it. But then came the after-action reports, the photographs, and the stories from survivors. A new American tank had appeared heavily armored, carrying a gun capable of punching through even a Panther's frontal plate. The reaction was disbelief, then denial, then unease. The Germans began calling it the American Tiger. In some reports, it was described as a heavy tank equal to their own Tiger I. In others as something even more formidable. In truth, only a handful of Pershings existed, but perception mattered more than numbers. Suddenly, every Sherman sighted in the distance became a possible Pershing. That uncertainty slowed decisions, forced hesitation. And in tank combat, hesitation is death. A German Panther commander interviewed after the war admitted, "Before Cologne, we laughed at American tanks. After Cologne, we started asking questions. What if the next one we faced wasn't a Sherman?" The loss of confidence was subtle but devastating. For years, German armor had fought from a position of psychological dominance. They were the hunters, the Americans, the prey. But now the prey had teeth. Even when Pershings were not present, the fear that they might be changed how German crews fought. They became cautious, slower to attack, quicker to withdraw. The psychological pendulum had swung. American intelligence quickly noticed the change. Reports from the front described German tanks abandoning strong positions earlier than expected. One commander wrote, "They don't linger like before. They hit, then pull back. They're nervous now." That nervousness wasn't just about one tank, it was about what the Pershing represented, the end of German certainty. For 2 years, the Wehrmacht had held on to the belief that their superiority in design and technology could compensate for the Allies' numbers. The Pershing destroyed that illusion. It proved that American industry could not only match German engineering, but surpass it when it mattered most. The Cologne duel became a symbol of that realization, a visible, undeniable proof that the tide of innovation had turned. The psychological effect reached beyond the battlefield. When the footage was shown to American lawmakers, it silenced critics who had demanded to know why so many tankers had died in inferior machines. The army used it as evidence that lessons had been learned, that change was underway. In factories back home, workers watched it too proud that their hands had built something that could stand against Germany's best. The image of the burning Panther became an emblem of justice and progress of technology finally catching up to courage. Even General Eisenhower reportedly viewed the film and remarked, "At last we have something that can stand up to them." But there was another layer to the story, the human one. Inside Eagle 7, none of the crew thought about history or symbolism. They were just doing their job, trying to survive. When the battle ended, they didn't cheer. They sat quietly, shaken by the speed and violence of it all. Smoyer later recalled, "It wasn't triumph, it was relief. We'd seen too many friends die. We were just glad it was over." That humility reflected the true nature of the Pershing's victory. It wasn't about glory or revenge. It was about balance, the long-delayed moment when courage and technology finally met on equal ground. And though the Pershing arrived too late to change the outcome of the war, it changed the way the American soldier felt about his fight. He no longer went into battle resigned to die in an inferior machine. He went, knowing that his tank could fight, could win, could protect him. That feeling, that confidence, was priceless. In the end, the Battle of Cologne was not a grand strategic event. It didn't alter the map or shorten the war by months, but it ended an era, the era when German tank commanders laughed at their enemies. It marked the moment when the psychological scales tipped, when the myth of the invincible panther and tiger was replaced by the reality of American adaptation. The Pershing didn't win the war, but it won something just as important: respect from friend and foe alike. And respect once lost is never regained. The guns in Europe fell silent in May 1945. Germany surrendered. The cities burned out, and the tank that had ended the laughter of German commanders, the M26 Pershing, stood ready for a war that was already over. Only a few hundred Pershings ever reached Europe before the fighting stopped. Most never fired a shot. They rolled through conquered towns and across quiet fields, monuments to a lesson learned too late. For the men who had fought and bled in Shermans, the sight was bittersweet. Here was the tank they had begged for: powerful, well-armored, capable, but it had arrived just months too late to save their friends. Yet history would not forget the Pershing. Its brief appearance in the final battles of the war would echo for decades to come, shaping every American tank that followed. The dawn of a new doctrine. After the war, American engineers and officers studied the wreckage of both German and Allied armor. They laid out Panthers, Tigers, Shermans, and Pershings side by side, comparing every inch, every bolt, every gear, every flaw. The lessons were unmistakable. The Germans had built masterpieces, elegant, lethal, and fragile. The Panther's final drive assembly lasted barely 900 kilometers before failing. The Tiger's interleaved road wheels clogged with mud and froze in winter, immobilizing the tank, until crews spent hours thawing them with blowtorches. These designs were brilliant but brittle, too complex, too expensive, too delicate for the endless grind of war. The Pershing, by contrast, was simple, not perfect but practical. Its parts could be mass-produced, replaced, repaired in the field by soldiers with wrenches and grit. Mechanics who had worked on Shermans could maintain it without special training. It embodied a philosophy born from the factory floor, not the drawing board. Better to have 100 tanks that can fight tomorrow than 10 that can fight today and break down next week. That philosophy would define the next half-century of American armor. The Korean War Pershing's second life. 5 years after Cologne, the world was at war again, this time in the mountains and rice fields of Korea. When North Korean forces invaded in June 1950, they did so with Soviet-made T-34 divided by 85 tanks, the same design that had destroyed the German army on the Eastern Front. The T-34 was fast, well-armed, and battle-tested. Against the outdated Shermans still in American service, it was deadly. The first tank battles of the Korean War were a shock. Shermans burned once more, just as they had in France. But then from depots and storage yards in Japan, the M26 Pershings were brought out again, old, heavy, and dusty, but still formidable. When they arrived on the Korean peninsula, everything changed. The Pershing's 90mm gun easily penetrated the T-34's sloped armor at any combat range. Its thick frontal plate could shrug off the T-34's 85mm shells, except at near point-blank distance. In duel after duel, Pershings dominated. A 1,954 Army survey reported that the Pershing accounted for nearly one-third of all U.S. tank kills in Korea, despite representing a small fraction of the total force. The veterans of Korea would later say the same thing their fathers had said in 1945, that the Pershing restored confidence, that it gave them a fair fight. But they also discovered its flaws. Korea's steep mountains and primitive roads strained the Pershing's underpowered engine. The old transmission, designed for a lighter tank, often broke under stress. The lessons of reliability were learned again, painfully but permanently. By 1951, the solution arrived. The M46 pattern, essentially an improved Pershing, with a new engine, stronger transmission, and refinements based on Korean experience. From the M46 came the M47, then the M48, and finally the M60 each, a direct descendant of that tank that fought in Cologne. The name changed, the design evolved, but the bloodline remained. Every pattern carried the DNA of the Pershing, the same balance of armor, firepower, and practicality. And eventually that lineage would lead to the most advanced tank of them all, the M1 Abrams. The line to the Abrams. When the M1 Abrams entered service in 1980, it seemed like a machine from another world. Composite chobham armor, digital fire control, a 120mm smoothbore gun, and a jet turbine engine that could propel the 60-ton monster faster than any tank before it. It was the ultimate expression of everything learned since 1945: mobility, survivability, firepower, and above all, crew protection. But its roots ran deep. The Abrams, like the Pershing, was built not to be beautiful, but to be reliable, to work in mud, sand, snow, or heat, to be fixed in the field to bring its crew home. That was the Pershing's legacy, the idea that reliability is not the enemy of power but the foundation of it. The Abrams was the culmination of a design philosophy born in the ruins of Cologne. Never again would an American soldier go to war in a tank that was good enough. Never again would they rely solely on numbers to balance the scales. They would have the best or nothing at all, a machine and its meaning. But the Pershing's legacy isn't just mechanical, it's human. It's about the men who fought inside it, and the lessons they carried home. Clarence Smoyer, the gunner who fired those 3 shots in Cologne, lived to the age of 99. For decades he avoided talking about the war. He didn't see himself as a hero, just lucky. When he finally met the family of Wilhelm Bartelborth, the Panther commander he had defeated, he expressed relief that Bartelborth had survived. "I was doing my job," Smoyer said quietly, "but I'm glad they lived." When you get old, you understand it's not about victory. It's about survival. Bartelborth himself, long after the war, told his children about that duel. He remembered seeing the unfamiliar silhouette, thinking it was a German tank, and realizing too late that it wasn't. He said, "That was the day I understood that Germany had lost the war not because of one battle, but because the enemy had learned." The Pershing in that sense was more than steel. It was a turning point in thought. It marked the moment when the United States stopped underestimating its enemies, when it began to value not just mass production but innovation and protection. It taught that courage alone isn't enough, it must be matched by capability. The enduring lesson today, the very same Pershing that fought in Cologne, serial number 303308 Eagle 7, still exists. It has been restored and displayed at military museums and commemorations, its long gun barrel and scarred armor preserved as reminders of that 90-second duel. Visitors who stand before it can still see the faint outline of its nickname painted on the turret. The same gun, the same steel, the same story. It stands for more than a single victory. It stands for a philosophy forged in the hardest way possible, through loss, through trial, through adaptation. It is the story of how a nation learned to listen to its soldiers, to respect their experience, and to give them not just numbers but quality. It's the story of how arrogance gave way to humility, and how humility gave birth to progress. From Cologne's ruins to Korea's mountains, from the patterns of the Cold War to the Abrams of Desert Storm, the Pershing's spirit endured. Every time an American tanker starts his engine, he is echoing a lineage that began with a handful of men in a smoking city fighting for survival and for redemption. The duel at Cologne didn't end a war, but it ended an illusion. The illusion of German invincibility. The illusion that good enough was ever enough. In those 90 seconds caught on flickering film, a new truth was born, that courage deserves capability, and that the best defense of a soldier's life is the machine built to protect it. That is the legacy of the M26 Pershing, the tank that stopped the laughter and began a new chapter in the history of war.